We now know the 5 positions that Ruben Amorim and Manchester United want to sign this summer. However, things are not going to be easy. Sales must be made, and we're not the only ones in pursuit of some of these players. This is all the latest Manchester United transfer news. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I want to start off by saying that Muppeteers have said that Manchester United are hopeful to make 5 summer signings, and we know the positions and in some cases the exact player that they're prioritising. Now, of course, there was Cunha. That's all but done. Medical booked this week. He'll be on £200,000 a week and will wear the number 10. Now, also on the list is a striker. We don't have an exact name for the striker, which is interesting. However, we'll go over some of the interest today. There's also Mbeumo, but Mbeumo will not be easy. And so United have also lined up a short list of alternatives, which we'll get into today as well. And the last 2 positions that Man United hope to make this summer is a midfielder, which is a very, very interesting one because we definitely need a midfielder, but there's not really been any concrete links to one. And then last but not least is a goalkeeper. As we've already said on the channel, going into this summer, if you went back a few months ago, goalkeeper was not a priority position. However, things have changed drastically over the last week or so because Onana's attitude and motivations seem about as good as his goalkeeping ability. So let's begin. Starting off with striker is Delap. So United have presented Delap their vision and future plans on how he will fit in. It's all up to him now to make the decision, which this week will be key for. Now, we're not the only ones in for Delap, and I would understand why he wouldn't choose Manchester United. One club that are interested that I definitely don't think he'll go to is Newcastle, because whilst they have the Champions League football, which he apparently wants, he's not getting many games ahead of Isak. So I think that is an absolute no-go. Now, Everton have apparently offered him a good financial package and given him a promise of allowing him to leave in 2 to 3 years. However, that is, I think, still a big risk for him. Almost a bigger risk of someone like us or Chelsea signing him to be our starting number 9. And that's because if he goes to Everton, continues to bag goals in, gets better and better, hits a 20-goal season, fantastic. He will get that big move easily and get Everton big money in the process. However, if that's a move that doesn't work out for him and he's 25 and still only getting about 10 goals a season in the Prem, then he's kissed his chance of getting a big top move goodbye. Which is why I think Chelsea or United are the 2 most likely options for him. But then there's another thing he has to think about, and he will be thinking about, and that is the World Cup next year with England. If he goes to Everton, the odds are he probably isn't going to get picked unless he has an absolutely world-class season. At Newcastle, again, he's not playing ahead of Isak. There's no chance he gets picked for England. So then he's got to make a choice. Is being a rotation striker, maybe playing 20-odd games for Chelsea next season, some of those may be coming in the Champions League, a better gateway for him to get into that England squad than it would be to maybe play 30, 40 plus games for Man United next season? You would think the Man United option's a no-brainer. Playing 40 games as the starting number 9 for the biggest club in the country should theoretically get you into that England setup. However, the recent England squad that was just announced didn't have a single Man United player in it. Not even Maguire, who's probably been our best English player. And so Delap will understandably look at that and think, if United have another stinky season, it doesn't matter if I start 40 plus games. I'm still not going to get a look in. And so we'll have to see what happens there. Talking to strikers though, we need to get rid of some, even though we've barely got any. One of which being Højlund. As we know, all the top clubs in Italy are interested in him. His stock is still high in Italy, and it does look like it's likely he will leave. However, Inter, who I think now seem to be almost the most interested, apparently want a loan with an option to buy. I definitely don't want that. I think Højlund just has to go full stop. I think a loan with an option, especially an obligation maybe, but even then it could be a Sancho situation. But I don't think a loan to be the way we go. We need the money for this summer rebuild right now. A loan is just passing the problem onto someone else for another 12 months and hoping that at the end of it, Højlund did just about enough for Inter to go, yeah, you know what? Sure. However, like I said, it could just be a Sancho option where we offload him to Inter, he does all right, they go, yeah, no, thanks for the 12 months, but we're now going to go get a better striker. Højlund's your problem again, and then we're stuck with him. So if it was down to me, I would much prefer, I would even take, right, hear me out, if we loaned Højlund to Inter with an option to buy for 40 million quid or 45 million quid, or Napoli came in and said, we'll buy him for 30, 35 right now, even though that's a 10 million difference, I almost think that is worth it. Let me know what you think below. But Højlund's not the only forward that looks to be leaving the club, as Rashford most definitely will be. Now, he is not short of suitors. Barcelona are very, very interested in him. They have been for a while, since January really. And even before then. But Deco and Hansi Flick are big, big fans. And Rashford under Flick would be a movie. The problem is, it wouldn't be a movie that features in many cinemas. What I mean by that is, he's not starting ahead of Yamal. Not in a million years. And if Rafinha carries on as he is, he's not starting ahead of him in a million years. And then up front, Lewandowski, you would think he would always get the nod ahead of Rashford. And is Rashford being hired to be their striker? It's not exactly like a like-for-like replacement there, is it? So I don't know about Rashford's playing time for Barcelona, which may or may not be an issue for him. I don't know. Now, I've also seen Barcelona linked with Leao. If they was to sign Rafa Leao, I think that would open the door again for Rashford to AC Milan. We know they were interested in January, but they went and got Kyle Walker on loan instead. That went well. But if they were to sell Rafa Leao to Barcelona, they would need a replacement and they would have the funds for Rashford, who I think would probably be the most perfect Rafa Leao replacement they could possibly get. In fact, could even be an upgrade. And so I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in this summer, AC Milan become interested in Rashford again. We'll have to wait and see, but Rashford for about 40 million, definitely going. Which hopefully frees up a little bit of money for Bryan Mbeumo. We know that we have to sell in order to get Mbeumo. And I made the video yesterday. I think Mbeumo would be the most important signing we have made at this club in years. I rate him that highly. I think if we was to sign him, he would end the season next year as our player of the season. But unfortunately, Newcastle seem like they're about to enter pole position. Apparently they're ready to make a bid, and if they can then agree that price, you would think they'd get him, because they have the Champions League football. That front three of Gordon, Isak and Mbeumo, it's just absolutely filthy what I would do to have a forward line that good. But you would think if Newcastle can edge ahead in this deal, they would be the favourites. Now, apparently we've been in talks with representatives of Mbeumo. The player is aware of our interest. We just have to hope that the We Are Man United pull is enough to win that one. But unfortunately, like I said, you have to make a sale. Either Rashford or, more ideally, Garnacho goes, and that allows us to start this deal ASAP and beat Newcastle. However, if the club miss out on Mbeumo, there is a short list of players to get instead. And the fact that there is such a big short list of players tells me that the club know they're not in a favoured position to get Mbeumo. Unfortunately, that absolutely sucks. But the alternatives include Eberechi Eze, who, to be fair, I am a huge fan of. Semenyo's another one, and then Tyler Dibbling. Tyler Dibbling makes sense. It fits the Ineos bill. Young, Prem-ish proven, and now that he's relegated, you would expect it to be for a good price. But for me, we have to go all out for Mbeumo. Now, talking to midfielders, Kobbie Mainoo. Thankfully, I'm not here to tell you guys that he's leaving. However, there is an update, a small one, on his contract negotiations. And I say small one because apparently there is no sign of resolution just yet. It's understood that he's seeking £180,000 a week to provide parity with at least some of his teammates. And that makes sense. And if he sees the reports of Cunha getting 200k a week, that makes sense. But more importantly, and more understandably, is that he wants to know where he fits in with this Amorim system, as it's probably going to harm his chances of going to the World Cup next year. I mean, like I said, we've already seen he's not been called up to the most recent squad because he's not playing under Amorim. Now, I don't think he wants to leave. If he was told by Amorim, listen, I have a plan for you, you are a very important player in the future of my system and this club, I think he would more than happily stay. But it's whether that's going to be the case. Now, luckily, there was reports earlier that the club are looking to improve Mainoo athletically and physically, as that seems to be what Amorim thinks he's lacking. There is no doubt that Mainoo has the talent to play in Amorim's system. He's got the talent to play in any system, let's be real. He is that good. So fingers crossed, Mainoo will break out again for us next season. But talking of midfielders in that pivot, we do need one. It was on that list of 5 players that we want. The question is, who? As much as I like the idea of one game a week Casemiro now, because we know one game a week Casemiro can be absolutely world class, that one game a week Casemiro usually comes in Europe. Prem Casemiro, you have no idea what you're going to get. You could either get the best midfielder in the league, or you're covering your eyes begging he gets subbed off. And I don't know which we're going to get. So without a shadow of a doubt, we need a midfielder to be in that pivot alongside Bruno. But like I said, there is no concrete links. At best, the links we've had is Edison from Atalanta, but again, it's not concrete. It's just that, yeah, there's interest in the player, and there has been for about 6 months now, but there's not really been any talk of a concrete move being made there. A lot of fans I know want Delap from Brighton, and I understand why, and he does technically fit the Ineos model. Again, like I said, young, proven, but he's expensive. They've just not long sold Caicedo for a British record. Delap is not going to be cheap. And so unfortunately, I think that's just off the cards and unrealistic altogether. So the midfield one, I'm glad to see that it's something United want, but the thing is, I don't think until we start making substantial sales that we're going to know who we want in that midfield position, which tells me it's not a major priority, which is also worrisome because it's too soon for someone like Kone to come in, and I don't think Collier is ready to be playing week in, week out for us. Unlike midfield though, goalkeeper is a position in which we are starting to get some concrete targets, one of which is Vanja Milinkovic-Savic, someone who did used to play for us in the youth academy, but I think because of the wrong work permit or couldn't get a work permit, we were forced into selling him for pennies. However, he's now at Torino, he's doing good, and according to Fabrizio Romano, he would also be interested in joining the club. I'd be more than happy with him. To be fair, you could fool me into being happy with any goalkeeper we sign. Another one we're linked with is Emi Martinez. He'd be an upgrade on Onana, sure. However, he's someone who I think has a clanger in him. I think it's a goalkeeper that I think would be looking to move on again in the next 3 years anyway. I think the dream goalkeeper target for both the fans and clubs is Joan Garcia from Espanyol. He's cheap, release clause of about, I think it's 25 million euros. Would have been even cheaper if they got relegated, but they avoided it on the last day of the season. If he was to be relegated, his clause would have gone down to, I think it was about 15 million euros or 12 million euros, would have been an absolute steal. But the fact that he's cheap and young at only 24, which is like baby years for goalkeepers, it makes sense why Ineos would want him. Now, we would have to sell Onana in order to get him, but you would think it would be almost a straight swap. Obviously not between clubs, but you would expect to sell Onana for about 20 to 25 million, and that 20 to 25 million would just go straight back onto Joan Garcia. He's already rejected Barcelona. He doesn't want to join them. Obviously, there's that big, huge rivalry between Barcelona and Espanyol, so that makes sense. And his priority is actually to move to the Premier League, and United are interested. What's really interesting is, I'm going to put on screen right now, the comparisons between Andre Onana, Milinkovic-Savic, and Joan Garcia. He is the standout best goalkeeper. Onana, on the other hand, is the standout worst. Understandable, he played in an absolutely catastrophic team, but let's not pretend like he's not a big reason as to why that team was so catastrophic. But all in all, I think if we can end this summer signing Delap, Cunha, and Mbeumo, a good midfielder for that pivot, and either Martinez, Milinkovic-Savic, or Joan Garcia, I would have no worries about that team pushing for top 6. Now, if they all go well, and the fact that we have one game a week, no distractions with European football, you would hope we could turn that push for top 6 into a push for top 4. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Unfortunately, the standards have fallen at United. I know we don't want to admit it, but it's the case. 12 years of failure will do that to you. A season where you finish 17th in the league and get no European football whatsoever will do that to you. Unfortunately, we have to bring our expectations down. We're not going to be finishing in the top 3 next season. We're probably not going to be finishing in the top 3 the season after that either. Top 6 has to realistically be the aim next season, and if we make the signings that we've been linked to, I think that should be more than enough. Let me know what you think below. Is that cope or is that a reality?